This first series sort of spawned off of a project that Jules and Guy and I did, um, the Abenaki Foodways project, which you can find online, which has a website, and the goal of which was to kind of be able to give some curriculum in schools. About the Abenaki. So, along with that, we were trying to do a number of these sort of talks to get to know different people who work in different parts of the food system in at Odanak and Wolanak. So, tonight we have Jacques Watso, who there he is. Um, Jules, is there a way to make Jacques the main person? I see, I don't know, is
You are the
this,
main person, Rich.
yeah. Well, I mean, just I guess the main speaker bigger. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Hi, Jacques. So, Jacques, thanks for finding the time. I know you're a super busy guy. So I know most everyone's here, but just for the recording, can you tell me just to start off in the most briefest sense, for people who maybe are joining us for the first time, where is Odanak? Where's Wolanak? Who are the Abenaki? Did you hear me, Jacques?
Oh, me?
Yeah,
Oh, no.
you.
I thought you were
Yeah,
asking
yeah.
the
You're
people
on.
in the chat room, where are you from?
No, no,
Oh,
no.
yes.
No,
Oh,
no.
yes.
Yeah,
Well, of
just
course. Well, my name is Jacques Watso. I'm an Abenaki from Odanak. Odanak is in southern Quebec, which is on the St. Francis River, which is at the conjuncture of the St. Lawrence River. And it goes all the way down to Sherbrooke, the river, and then it moves over to the Magog River that goes to Lac Memphremagog. So it used to be our traditional highway to all the way up to Odanak. Our old ancient name of the village was called Al Sagantaguk, which means where there's an abandoned cabin, which is somewhere in the communes here in Odanak near the river. That's where the old village used to be before the missionaries came to establish themselves here. And at a certain point, this was a northern point of the Abenaki territory that spans all the way from close to Quebec City on the Chaudière and across over to the HMA River, all the way to the Richelieu River, and all the way down to the Hudson to the Atlantic Ocean. That used to be at the beginning of the British and French colonies, the traditional territories. And as the French moved in, there was displacement on the territory that spanned over many centuries. So we got pushed all the way up north. And slowly Odanak became a mission because there was missionaries. There was a Catholic mission, and later on it became also a Anglican mission. And that was people that got displaced from the territory. They moved here to Odanak. And at one point, at the beginning of the Canadian Confederacy, there was the Indian Act that was put in place by the federal government, and they established a reserve system. So the mission became a reserve. And Wolinak, they migrated. There was one group that migrated from the state of Maine that went down to Quebec City, and then they moved inland, and they ended up on the Bécancour River, which is in front of Three Rivers. And that's their. There was a mission over there too, and they established themselves. And them too, at the beginning of the Confederacy, became a reserve. And today there's two Abenaki reserves here in the province of Quebec. There are 11 indigenous peoples in the province of Quebec. And each of these indigenous peoples have communities, which are called reserves. So there's 55 reserves here in the province of Quebec. Two Abenaki, and the rest is the different nations that are spread out on the vast territory, which is the province of Quebec, all the way up north to the Inuit and all the way down south to us, the Abenaki. So that's basically that's a brief overlook of who we are and where we're situated in.
Mhm.
And Vermont and New England is really close to Odenak. It's an hour drive from here. If I was in Sherbrooke just this week, and Sherbrooke is an hour drive from Odenak, and you go down 15 minutes down the road, and you're in the state of Vermont.
Mhm. Awesome. Awesome. Um, so I know that you're a Watso, and in my own research, I've seen the Watsos often traveled throughout, even a few generations ago,
Yes.
working and doing things.
Oh well, there was a lot
Yeah,
of, like I said, there was a lot of displacement
yeah.
through history. And here in 1759, there was a raid in Odanak by Rogers Rangers. It was a militia that was established by the British Crown to come and punish the Indians of St. Francis Indians back then. They used to call us because we'd go back on the territory and do raids all across New England, and we were vicious and determined to take back our lands, but we were overwhelmed by the presence of the British. But we do hit and run and go back on the territory and attack different settlements all the way down to Massachusetts and all the way back here. So we were forced to be reckoned with. And at that time, the British they were preparing to confront the French in Quebec City to do the last. They call it the War of Conquest, and at the same time they did a raid here in Odanak, and they set out from New England to come and exterminate the Abenaki. So on the morning of October 4th, Rogers Rangers came to Odanak, and he almost decimated the population of Odanak. And those who are here today are the survivors. And the year after that, in 1760, the first Watso couple came here. It was Jean-Baptiste
Mm.
Watso came here with his wife, Marie Obamsawin, and they came in and secured the village because of Watso. There's about 30 Watsos left there on the planet, but we were always a small family, but very determined to participate, not participate, but take care of business here in Odanak. And
Mhm.
all through that point, that first point that we were here, we were always in commerce, always involved in communities. And when the Indian Act was started at the beginning of the Canadian Confederacy, all the old political system of family chiefs and war chiefs and peacetime chiefs, that was abolished, and they established a electoral system like in Western democracy type system, and the Indian Act electoral code or electoral system was established all across Canada.
Mhm.
And through history, there was a lot of different Watso that was involved in politics, whether you became chief or myself. I'm an elected official at the Odanak Council. And before that, there was my uncle Walter, who was chief in the 1970s. And then before that, there was William Watso, one of my great uncles, that was
Mhm.
a chief here in Odanak. And they were all in the basket trade back in
Mhm.
the 30s. And so we were always involved, and still today we're very involved in the community life. And through displacement, not displacement, but through the need to find work, people they left the community. There was different waves of migration, not just the Watso family, but the different families. They all went their separate ways. And once the basket trade fell, because in the 1930s, 1940s, there was a big, big, big boom of the basket industry. A lot of our people went back to New England to sell their baskets, and they made a lot of money. So when people got jealous of the Indians making so much money, they banned the selling of baskets, and we had to go through the Indian agent. Each community has an Indian agent. At that time, that system got abolished in the 1990s, but they they took control of the prosperous economic development through the basket trade. So poverty came back to Odanak. So in the 1940s, that's when there was a residential school system in place, but there was a school here in Odanak, and the Anglicans, which the Watsos are part of, the Anglican Church, in 1945, 46, they came and took all the Anglican kids, and they shipped them off to a residential school out in Ontario. And the younger ones, they stayed back. So my mother and my aunt Bernice, they stayed in Odanak, and all the older ones, they went to residential school. There was three major families, a half, the Benedicts and the Watsos, that went to these residential schools in Ontario, which is pretty far from the community. And in Odanak, there's a Catholic school, so the nuns would take care of us trying to, because there was a policy from the federal government to assimilate the Indians all across Canada. And that was the purpose of the residential schools, and also what they call the day schools, the schools on reserve, and their mission was to forbid the practice of your culture, your heritage, and Odanak was the language. And the Indian Act was implemented differently in different communities. Some communities you could speak your language, like my wife's community. They still went to residential school all the way up to the 1990s, but they still had to speak. They still could speak their language within the class, but they couldn't practice their spiritual culture. So after the people that came back from residential schools, like my uncles and aunts, they all moved to my grandmother. They shipped them off to the United States in Albany because they had a network of natives living down there, and they went there for work. So the last one to leave Odanak was my Aunt Bernice, and my mother. She's the youngest one of the family. She's the one that left behind because my grandmother kept her in Odanak, and once my Aunt Bernice turned 18, she shipped them off because there was nothing here in Odanak besides the basket trade, which my grandmother was. It was the only means of survival. So they were surviving off the baskets. They weren't making a living off of it. So there was no work in the region. There was a lot of discrimination and a lot of racism in the businesses around here. So most of the people they left, and those that left first, once they found jobs, they invited their family members or friends from the community to come with them. But just before that, most of the men here in the region would be guides, hunting guides for rich Americans that would come to outfitters in northern Three Rivers across the St. Lawrence, and the big shots there that were here, they really appreciated the Abenaki, so they offered them jobs in their industries or their businesses. So some of them they followed their guides. No, they were guides, but they followed their bosses. Some ended up in Waterbury, Connecticut. Others in my family ended up in the capital region of Albany, and some of them they just migrated. A lot of the French families from Odanak, they went to Montreal to work in the shops and manufacturers, or Sherbrooke, that region, or Three Rivers. So they went there, and then they built the families, and a lot of the descendants that we have today are from these regions, close Odanak, not close to Odanak, Three Rivers, Montreal, Sherbrooke, and then you go further down south to New York, Waterbury, some in Vermont, some in New Hampshire. So there was a diaspora that was made not out of it's out of subsistence, out of survival to find a better life that was at that time in Odanak, 1950s, 60s, 70s. And the prosperous times came back in the 90s, 2000 in Odanak, where, but most of the families they had moved away. Not that they didn't want to stay, but there was nothing here for them, and those that stayed back kind of held the fort. But at the same time, it was very hard times for everybody, and that's like a economic portrait of Odanak, and but all through that. Because these are not hard stories to listen, but there was something that like my mother said, the soup, we were going to talk about le
Yeah,
sagamité there, but
yeah.
food kept us together, where the sagamité for my mother and other families was a survival soup at one point, where a few generations before it was a cultural element of the base of the food chain of the Abenaki was corn, squash, and beans, and the soup is composed of these the famous three sisters. And when the hard times came, well, people
Mhm.
they survived off the soup. So it has a hardship that comes with it, a historical background that comes with it. Is the Abenaki cultural history or heritage that comes through a dish, and at the same time, where all the families were very resilient because they all sat around the table eating delicious traditional foods. And since there were periods where there was no game in the region, so they would snare, and like my uncles would snare and get rabbit or a partridge or a muskrat, and that would end up in the soup or the delicious stews for the survival of the family. So each family tried to survive as best as they could because there was no social net for as we do have today. But it was hard times, and sometimes when I talk to the elders of my community, they get a certain nostalgia when they eat this soup because it brings back certain part that was hard growing up. Well, there was a lot of joy and happiness with her, but at the same time, through poverty came solidarity within the community, and that's kind of hard to rebuild that solidarity within the community because it's different times, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I obviously yes, Sagamite is the headline for this. So can you just tell me, in case anybody has never had it, what is Sagamite? What do you usually
Yes.
find it? Is it where is it eaten? Do you know what does the word mean? Any of those
Yeah,
things?
sagamite is a French aside word, because we're in the province of Quebec, a lot of French, of an Abenaki word, which means sagabon, which means a corn soup.
Mhm.
And within the corn soup, or you'd add the beans, you'd add what you had at your disposal. If you were traveling back in colonial times, or you weren't hunting a moose every single day, but if you were catching fish or you snare something, you get the protein to add to the soup. But
Mhm.
just the soup by itself, it's delicious because once you cook your beans, well, at a certain point, people had gardens and all that, and once you grow your beans, you get once you boil it up, it thickens the broth, so it's very rich and filling as a dish by itself. And once you add some corn, you add some squash or seeds like pumpkin seeds or different type of seeds. Plus you add your protein, and you have a really delicious plate, and it help you pass through the day. But the soup basically the sagamite. It's based off of a corn or hominy corn and beans.
Mhm.
And then there's the different varieties from different First Nations too there, but here it was mostly the beans and the hominy corn. Some people they added the squash. They would call it the Three Sisters soup, and like a lot of Mohawks are neighbors, and the Hurons they use a lot of the Three Sisters soup, but it was less. Although it was an important part of our culinary heritage, the squash there, but the sagamite as is was two main ingredients was beans and hominy corn.
Mhm. Okay.
But
And
back then, you want to talk
yeah, yeah.
about the hominy corn
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because that was something that's delicious.
Yeah.
It's back then, a long time ago. They used to
Mhm.
grow the corn, different variety of corns, and they would boil up. They would dry up the corn, and once it was dry, they would boil it up with hash from the
Ash,
fire
hot
pit.
ash. Yeah.
Yes, and then that little skin that's on the kettle of
Mhm.
the corn would be removed, and then you'd wash it out, then you dry it out. Once you add it to a soup, the corn would take its full expansion and would have a different taste and different flavor, and it was more filling than a corn on the cob there. So
Mhm.
that's very technique, and now it's more industrialized where they use not chemicals there, but
Lye or something.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Just to
Yeah.
take it off there. And at one point, people used to buy them in cans
Mhm.
here in Quebec, but there was not a big demand, so they put it off the market all across Canada. So
Mhm.
for about a decade or two, people didn't have access to the sagamite or the hominy corn, which was the main ingredients. So with the migration of Latinos that came to
Mhm.
Quebec, a lot of Latinos moved to Quebec because it's simpler to with the proximity of French and Spanish. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of migration here in Quebec, and they brought the corn back on the
Nice.
shelves. So we just within the last 5 years, we get access directly to hominy corn in a can or dried hominy corn. So people are enthusiasts to bring back the soup because here we used to call it the Indian soup. Amongst
Mhm.
each other, there was the Indian soup, and most of the people would add some deer and some bones and le sobuco into your soup to thicken it up. And then you got the marrow that's in it that's delicious. So
Mhm.
all these ingredients are coming back. So back in COVID, I sat down because I'm an entrepreneur in this culinary art, and I, like many people, the beginning of COVID, there was a shutdown here in the province of Quebec.
Mhm.
So we we couldn't go to the groceries for about 3 months. We could only go. There was one person per household could go to the groceries for a maximum of 1 hour. So that was my daily routine to go to the groceries and walk the aisles. And at one point, I saw a mason jar with ingredients of a minestrone soup.
Mm.
And I said, oh, that's a good idea. So I bought it. I tested it out. It wasn't good. But I said, you know what would be good is sagamite or the Indian soup in the mason jar. So I tried to look for ingredients, the hominy corn. And that's where I found hominy corns through my Latin connections.
Mhm.
And the idea sprung. And then I made mason jars that I distributed in the community free of charge because I know everybody was at home doing nothing and being very anxious because of the COVID. And at the beginning, we didn't know where the pandemic was going. So
Yeah.
people started cooking. And here in Odanak, we have a program, a wild game program, where we have
Mhm.
community hunters. And these community hunters, they have a mandate to get kill 30 deer a year. And in this process, there's a distribution that's done within the community to the elders, the low-income families, single families, and it goes down the chain there. And so there's this distribution of venison with the soup kind of reintroduce the Indian soup or sagamite to the community. And people were telling me you should commercialize your thing because I'm not a cook per se, and I'm not. I learned from people in my community to cook traditional foods and to prepare traditional foods. And being a hunter myself, you go hunt according to the different seasons. So it was a product that was reintroduced. And coming back to the hunting, we're trying to push a lot. Well, no, not pushing, but we'll be in the process of building a
Processing plant, like for meat?
yeah,
Yeah,
processing
yeah.
plant. Yeah,
Yep.
from the community hunters all the way to your plate, and we take care of the whole process. And we last year we sent 6 individuals to go to follow a
Mm.
butcher's program. So
Yep.
they will be the official hunters, official butchers, and people will can go hunt and bring their game to these. To
Mhm.
this place that they will have set up so they can prepare the deer meat for or any venison for themselves. And through this distribution, more and more people are keen to having access or to traditional foods.
Mhm.
So through the Bureau of Indakina, which is part of our tribal council, they're pushing a lot to reintroduce traditional foods. There's a lot of different like fiddleheads, different herbs, different roots, different I don't know the words in English, but different vegetables that are
Mhm. Wild
picked in the
foods.
wild, and
Yep.
yeah, different wild mushrooms also. So working hard to assess what we have on the territory so that
Very
people
cool.
can go themselves collect and add it to their food chain.
Uh-huh.
Because
Nice.
there was a nice study that was made at the Indakina where they did mix archaeology with the traditional foods. So there was a lot of archaeological digs that was done in Odanak,
Mhm.
and they found a lot of fire pits
Mhm.
and garbage sites and dumps from 200 years ago. So through the analysis of bones and through the different periods, they were able to establish the transition out of wild games
Mhm.
to more sedentary culture of raising cattle. So people would have like one cow, like my grandmother would have one pig, and they get it real fat, and then they send it to the butcher, and they trade it for corn, for flour,
Mhm.
for to go through the winter, and that was a way to assure the survival of their family. So all this is being been assessed and also reintroduced on our in our food chain. So we do community activities where we promote traditional foods. We have a lot of different potlucks through this season where we do traditional foods. There was one just over the weekend where we did traditional. We had beaver and duck stew offered to the community with sagamite, and so we're slowly reintroducing foods that were not forbid but forgotten from our own food chains. Because at the same time, modern society makes it easier to go to the grocery store to get some beef or some chicken instead of doing the old hunting thing. You got to prepare your hunting season and go hunting and clean out your food. So it's a lot of hard work, but it's part of the traditional ways also. So that's being reintroduced, and more people are getting their getting on board on hunting. Whereas at a certain point it was a stalemate, but now more and more people are interested because there's this whole cultural aspect that's behind it.
Mhm.
And at a certain point, it was more about getting meat to feed your family. But now that there's more of a financial security within Abenaki in modern society, where you can take the time to develop your cultural aspect through culinary experience. And
Nice.
also through the health center here in Odanak, there's a lot of they do cooking classes at night there for the community, and there's one program for the young parents and or
Mhm.
they teach them food, and they try to introduce wild game through their food chain for the new families, and they
Mhm.
we do meal on wheels for the elders, and sometimes we add some venison to their meals. So it's all
Mhm.
the way to reintroduce in the food chain
Mhm.
traditional food that we kind of forgot.
Yeah.
Because soon the muskrat season is coming there, so
Is muskrat good? I mean, I know duck and venison's delicious.
yes, it's
Yeah.
good. It depends
Yeah.
how you cook it also.
Okay.
Because beaver is not that good because they eat poplar. Now, I
Mhm.
always had beaver from different individuals, but there's a
Mhm.
way to prepare it. And my friend David Terrien there, who's an Abenaki trapper, and at one point 2 years ago, he cooked a line in a slow cooker with this
Mhm.
secret mix of spices, beaver. It was delicious. It was the best beaver I ever had because before, since they eat poplar, it ends up
Mhm.
in their fat, and poplar is very bitter, so the
Mhm.
meat turns, if you don't prepare it well or scrape off the fat in a certain way,
Mhm.
it kind of corrupts the meat there, and so I was had it, and all the beaver all the way up to today, till that day 2 years ago was really bitter and tasted like poplar. But
Okay.
my friend, he's a specialist, so he does raccoon, he does squirrel. He'd be a good guess. He does beaver, and he does specialize in muskrat because he traps for the fur. But some of the trappers here, they not the Abenaki, but the
Mhm.
others there, they just throw out the meat, but it's
Mhm.
still the good meat there. And so the muskrat is smaller. They don't eat on poplar, so
Mhm.
it's a brown meat, but it's delicious. Yeah.
Hmm. Nice. Does
I want to say it tastes like chicken there, but it's it's uh, it's different.
yeah.
Tastes a bit like
Um,
geese, I think.
okay. Yeah, geese delicious if you confit. I was gonna say, you mentioned at one point Sagamite sometimes has fish. How's the fishing these days in the area?
Well, it's still winter here, so.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess there's that.
Well, the ice fishing is over, but
Yeah.
the ice is going to fall,
Hmm.
gonna is going to go off, and that's when they go to spawn.
Yep.
They come up, they go up the river, and they spawn. So we catch by the with nets by the side of the river, walleye,
Uh-huh.
perch, and different deep waters like catfish there, and muskrat. They end up in the nets there, but so
Okay.
they go
Two
upwards.
for
So
one.
it's like a boom. And there's
Yeah.
a bass.
Okay.
It's more rare, but it's one of my favorite
Yeah.
fishes. And so they go up, and then there's rapids up in Odanak, up the river, and people they go fish with the line over there. So and
Hmm.
so it's nice. It's a nice little challenge before the calm of the summer sets in there, where
Hmm.
you go fishing with the liner. But also, there's a nice program that's going to start this spring about community fishing. So they're going to set up nets to catch a sturgeon. So we have how do you say we smoke, a lot of people smoke
Yeah.
their fish. So sturgeon being the emblem of the Abenaki of Odanak, it's a very tasteful. It's a thick skin there. There's a thick
Mhm.
skin on the sturgeon, but the meat on it, there's very fibery and thick, but there's a lot of fat between the meat and the skin. So once you cook it, yeah, you smoke it, it kind of merges together and you put some salt on it. It's very
Yeah, it's really
delicious.
good.
So we're trying to introduce that to, so not just venison for community distribution, but also fish.
Mhm.
So, but mostly sturgeon. We'll start with sturgeon. So
Yeah.
there's quite a big population of sturgeon in the river. It's not an endangered
Mm.
species like the perch is. The perch
Mm.
is a delicious food. It's like a smaller walleye, but
Mhm.
people really appreciated the type of fish here. But some people would add. Me, I prefer because my friend he smokes trout. I prefer to put the smoked trout in the soup. But
Mm.
sometimes there's different variety called a giblotte, where it's more of a tomato-based soup with chunks of sturgeon and the fat that's
Mm.
boiled up, and the fat thickens or greases up the broth there. So it's a bit like marrow does
Mhm.
with soups there. So
Yeah.
all these little family recipes also. So I do the Sagamite Watso, my
Mhm.
business. I named it Sagamite Watso because we do the best soup there. And
Mhm. I was going to ask you, Jacques, too. Can you give me a you told us about your community and your family a bit, but what's your story? How did you get to be a counselor and then a chef entrepreneur?
well, it all started when I was 4 years old. I was
Yeah.
young, maybe.
Yeah.
No, it really started when I was young, maybe 6, 7 years old. Back in Odenak, we had powwows, and the streets were filled. There was always a parade before the powwow started, so that was the big grand entry in the streets of Odenak. And it was my uncle Walter was chief, and but even after he was chief, maybe 81, 82 there, around those time I was 6, 7 there, or maybe 8 there. But we at that point we had moved from the reserve all the way to Sorel, which is 30 kilometers from here. And my mother, she was a single mom at that point, and with the 5 kids, we'd spend our summers over here. And at the powwow, we would line up there for the parade. So I saw my uncle when on a horse come drive. So it was like majestic to see like the aura. Where he had a big war bonnet with eagle feathers that he received there from the Lakotas, and so that kind of stuck with me. And still today, I have a picture on my fridge of my uncle in those days in the 80s there of doing that parade. So that kind of stuck with me. And then being a young adult there, I got involved into politics and like more provincial politics and like being a militant on human rights
Mhm.
and different topics there.
Mhm.
And I moved back to Odenak in 92, and I started to get involved in the community. And, through that, I ran for politics because there was elections every 2 years. So you'd run for council back then. Well, still today we call it to run for council. And here in Odenak, the political structure is that we have one chief and four councillors. And it's under universal voting system where the first four councillors that get the most vote they get elected, and then there's distribution of the the files. So in 2005, after my fourth try to be a councillor, I got elected in, and in 2005 there was a big scandal here in Odenak and big financial scandals of mismanagement of funds. And one councillor was there, and she was newly elected from the mandate before, and she found out about the mismanagement, and she saw it was really big, so she started to call Indian Affairs to come in. So we call it a scandal of the economic scandal of Odenak, and because at that time it was associated with federal politics where there was a scandal with the federal government. There was mismanagement of fund, and the government failed in Ottawa at the same time about that it happened in Odenak, and the council fell at that time. And I supported the councillor. It was Councillor Clyde Obamsawin, and she received a lot of backlash by like denouncing the
Mhm.
mismanagement of funds. So all the employees were fired. There was an election, and in 2005, I supported her. So in my campaign, I stood up and said, I support the cause that she's fighting. So I really split the community in 2005 into two factions, and still today there's sometimes a little bit of bitterness and discussions. But at 2005, I got elected for the first time in 2005, and now in 2026, I'm at my eighth mandate. But in 2005, the everything was to build. We scrapped all the politics, and at that same time, Danielle Nolette, that was on the series, was also came in as a general manager a few months before I got elected, and we started from scrap. We got a new council. We started to vote in policies and rebuild the whole structure. And all through the years, it took a long time to build up where we are today, and and to know a certain economic growth and reconciliation with ourselves, with our families, and over here in Odanak. And there was a hardship, not hardship, but a lot of division, but and a lot of mistrust because last year we settled a land claim, so there was still spectacle of this the 2005 mismanagement. So, but everything is in place to have a clear, transparent portrait of Odanak. So a lot of the people, is Danielle, working in high integrity level. So
Mhm.
it's a good team, and we built something nice there out of the ashes of that period. The more reserve, the reservation
Mhm.
way of thinking, and now we're moving towards a nation building
Mhm.
way of thinking, which is very different. I watched Alanis Obamsawin's documentary recently, and it's
Mhm.
about 2004 that it was done. So and the language has evolved too. I see people that some are gone, but some are still here, and the language that we used back then was more reservation
Mhm. Thinking.
thought process. More today, it's more the new generation is more inclined to talk about the nation and
Yeah.
nation building and reaching out and building something beautiful off of 2,000 years of colonialism that kept us down.
Yeah.
And after, after many centuries of being told that you're not a good individual because you're Indian, well, that kind of affects you, and that's what's transmitted intergenerationally. So, but now the people are breaking those cycles of intergenerational traumas to move to something else. To say, and the new generation, they didn't like live. Like I'm at a certain age where I kind of saw both worlds there, and the new generation are moving into a whole all new directions without the baggage that comes with it, all the hardship that comes with it. So it's nice to see them and to move in this positive directions. And it's nice to see them to pop up in community activities. Where we always bring food to activities, so this way they show up and a way to buy them. But at the same time, it introduced the knowledge of these are foods. It's your culinary heritage.
Mhm.
So I did politics all through. I do politics when I'm not cooking, but cooking
Yeah.
really brought me somewhere else.
Mhm.
And started my business, which is in full expansion, and trying to keep the humble through all that there. But
Mhm.
in 2000, like I said, at COVID, people asked me to commercialize my product. To say, you shouldn't introduce. It says why? Because people were still in the mindset that although it's a delicious plate, there's too much baggage that comes hardship that comes with it. But
Mhm.
then after discussions with my mother, she said, although I don't like it because it brings back too many
Mhm.
bad memories from my childhood, I prefer that. But it was delicious. It says I remember my mother the aura of the sweetgrass because they made baskets, and it brought back a nostalgia at the same time. But at the same time, it says when you eat soup all week long and that's all you have to eat.
Yeah.
See kids, like I said, I got a kid. She says, well, she doesn't like what's in her plate. Says, I'm sorry, but
Mhm.
I'm not cooking anything else. This is what you're gonna eat. So now she's in love with my soup. So I'm really appreciative of that.
Yeah.
So it brought me to another level to say, well, yes, we should.
Mhm.
Should. The soup has been around for 2,000 years and since the beginning of creation. So why not spread and then people are trying to introduce it. And they're even teaching it in third grade. They do an aspect on sagamité in all through the French schools in the province of Quebec, where they talk about the sagamité and what indigenous people would eat. And sometimes they call me and I go work in classes to talk about the soup and talk about my community, talk about my story, and then people I'm always surprised. They say it's delicious. I say, yes, yes, it is.
Mhm.
And you sometimes have the feeling of being is it really delicious? Or you're just trying to be polite. No, no, it's delicious. So you always have the stigma behind you of well, you're not supposed
Doubt.
to succeed in life for being Indian. You always doubt yourself there, but after a while there, this my soup is because I got a bag here. It's my old bag, sir. It's
Yeah.
not an info commercial, but it's the Three Sisters soups. I got my aunts and my mother on the cover,
Nice.
but the trying to distribute it. And in my bags, you got 9 variety of beans. You got the hominy corn, spices, and beef broth or vegetable broth, depending. People they just cook it at home. It takes a while to cook up the beans. At the same time, it brings the people together. And if you add venison and you're serving your soup to your family, then there's always a story that comes with the hunting season.
Mhm.
Backstory and this whole reconciliation with First Nations that's been going on for a few last years, really brings people at a different level of dialogue, where reconciliation in Canada, I don't know about the States, but in Canada was more pushed by the federal and provincial government that we got to reconcile with the Indians.
Mhm.
And I remember in 2018, we got a memo from the province of Quebec. We're reconciling with you. I said, okay, well, you should have asked us first there. And why you want to do it? You want to do it to give you a clean conscience, or because our perspective of reconciliation is reconciliating with ourselves, our families, our community, and our nations. And then you want to participate.
Mhm.
But it's a nice entry door to native cultures. Because,
Mhm.
like I said in the beginning, there's 11 different indigenous nations in Quebec, but we all have a different language, old traditional political system, different culture, different songs. Abenaki songs that you have heard before are not sung in different communities, and same with the
Mhm.
Mohawks. Their songs are not sung here because they have their songs. And my wife, she's at Sikamek, but they have their own way of doing things. So it helps them to see that we're not just Indians. We're different nations, and we have a rich history within each of these
Mhm.
nations. So it's a nice introduction to a dialogue. And I opened a catering business 2 years ago. Not that I wanted to, but someone asked me to do it. So I asked my cousin, and my wife says, I got a contract with the Chiefs Assembly. They had
Mhm.
a meeting, the night. They asked me to do catering. Says, I've never done catering. So I said, so I told him that. They said, well, do it anyways. Okay. So I cooked up something. I had some eels. We had some sagamité with something fancy there. They really appreciate it. So they put it up on Facebook. Thank you to Jacques, Sagamité Watso, Odenak for hosting us. And then people started calling me. So I told them, what do you want? That they wanted to do some catering. So we started slowly and built up a business of doing catering and getting access to, and then you learn as you go along, and
Yeah.
ask questions to my chef friends, and they help me out with the structuring, because you're in the catering business, so you know it is. You got to control your quantities, and it's a
Mhm.
lot of hard work because some people they eat within 15 minutes, but you spent 16 hours prepping the whole thing. So
Yeah.
that's, but you get the satisfaction at the end to say, hey, this was good. And
Mhm.
when they said, "Well, the soup is delicious," I really appreciate the feedback, and it's also become an ambassador to
Hmm.
my community through the soups as well. This is not just Indian soup. This is a Abenaki soup from Odanak, and this is the recipe of my family, and this is where we're from, and this is where we're going, and this is Odanak, and we have a museum. Come to Odanak, come and visit. So I do a lot of markets, I do a lot of festivals, I do a lot of powwows, and powwows are more. For me, they're more gratifying because there's a lot of elders that come. They say, "Oh, this is good," because it reminds them of their traditional foods.
Hmm.
And there's a series here on APTN called Chuck Hughes. He's a chef. He's called Chuck Hughes and First Nations Kitchen. I'll put it down here, and you can write the address down here. But it's called Chuck Hughes, and he travels across Canada and goes to visit different First Nations community. And then you see that with depending your region, you got access to different type of wild games, and there's different ways of cooking food. Because we got the bannock. You wanted to talk about the fry bread. We'll talk about it in a moment, but like each nation has its own way to prepare it. So the this TV shows. They came to night spot. They did a spot on my soup, and it's very different. It's different from oh yes, Chuck Hughes. It's different from one nation to the next. So at the same time,
Hmm.
it shows you what's being done elsewhere, and
Hmm.
people are very passionate. So it kind of all over introduces the soup. So like I said, I do a lot of powwows, and you got a lot of tourists that come in. They discover the soup and all that goes with it. Because when you talk about First Nation culinary art, what does it mean? Like nobody knows.
Hmm.
Nobody knows besides fry bread or Indian tacos, where that's like the two main dishes, and we don't eat like big chunk of moose meat there every day. There's a fine art that goes with it, traditional foods, but at the same time, it has evolved, and there's a lot of not a lot, but a few renowned chefs that produces that do cookbooks or
Hmm.
promotes like special contemporary recipes with traditional food. So people are trying to be reintroduced where, like, you just go back 10 years ago, people weren't talking about indigenous
Yes.
foods. And it's more and more introduced, and more communities. I did an event in Maine, in Bethel, Maine, with
Hmm.
a Penobscot member who was a cook over there. She has a catering business called Katahdin Catering. And we
Hmm.
came to the school, we talked about the corn, we cooked with the kids, and we talk about our culture and talk about the state of Maine. And because when I start my conferences in Quebec, I always say, how many indigenous nations is there in Quebec? And people they don't know says, well, that opens the discussion. We did the same thing in Maine. How many First Nations people is there in the state of Maine? People they didn't know. But, we've been neighbors for 400 years, so it's
Hmm.
important for you guys to know who your neighbors are. So it
Yep.
opens a dialogue, and it's a shared territory. So it brings us somewhere more positive than what I've known from
Hmm.
a few decades ago, and I'm very optimistic for the future and more people. Like recently, there was in Quebec City there was a course in the Wendat, which is a Wendat Huron Wendat First Nation here. They have a trade school in the community in the reserve, and they did a traditional First Nations cooking class.
Hmm.
So they formed chefs for the last 6 months, and they came out with a diploma and certified by the Quebec government, the education government, but it's all axed on First Nations cuisine. So that's something very beautiful. So they go back wherever they came from and establish either restaurants, and there's a few restaurants that are popping up, and more people are working on building restaurants or into
Yeah.
like food business too. Because
Hmm.
I do a soup, but there's a lot of people in Quebec. The Maliseet, the Wolostugwe, I do business with this woman that does sweet grass syrup, which is a
Hmm.
delicious product that you can add to your cuisine. And in
Nice.
Quebec, Wendake, there's the Warriors Blend spices, and they do a lot of boreal spices, and they got pickers that from all across Quebec that go pick like certain plants, certain the pine needles and
Mhm.
the different
Yeah.
types of flowers and wild spices that and they do
Mhm.
concoction soup, no, spice mixes,
Mhm.
and that's another way to discover
Yeah.
culinary art. And all across Canada and in the States, a lot of people they do foods. And the Mohawks, I sell their coffee. Sell a coffee from Ganasatagi. They import beans from Colombia and all over the place through equitable fair
Mhm.
trade
Mhm.
growers, indigenous fair trade growers from all over, and they torrefy the coffee in their community and they start to distribute it. It's called Moccasin Joe coffee.
Nice.
If you write it down, I'll get a 10% discount there.
Okay.
But
Sounds good.
it's a delicious product. It's coffee. Everybody drinks coffee, but it's not traditional to Odanak, but it's indigenously owned business. So I see them pop up, and as you talk and you network, you see that everybody's trying to promote their little spices or product, and so I'm very pleased to see this world, and there was something in that was done. It's done every year. It's called a powwow pitch, and a powwow pitch is a program where you have 1 minute to pitch your product, and it's divided in different sectors. And there's a food and beverage section where you got 1 minute to do a pitch, and you got judges from all over, from the RBC Bank, from Shopify, and they judge you on your merit. So I applied like 3 years ago, and I promoted my soup, and I didn't win, but I was a semi-finalist for the province of Quebec. But it helped us to network. It wasn't a competition where it was more circular, where we had the chance to network amongst each other, and that's how I discovered a lot of products across Canada, and vice versa. Like I sent out 300 bags of soup in Edmonton in the community over there for their food pantry, and there's a native center in Montreal where they take care of homeless First Nations. There's a big crisis of homelessness in Montreal, where people migrate to Montreal from their isolated communities and they fall into drugs and alcohol and they end up homeless, and so there's a big problem. So I go and distribute my soup over there for the food pantry, and or I got different businesses where I distribute my food.
Mhm.
And last year, in this whole big process of reconciliation, Air Canada, which is a major Canadian airline, they have lounges for business class, and they offer free drinks, free meals for people in the business class. So it's open 24/7, and they asked me to bring this soup, my Three Sisters soup. It's the vegetarian version, and they serve it 24/7.
No.
So the last
Wow.
year in the Montreal airport, there's 3 Air Canada lounges. It goes to Toronto, now it goes to Edmonton and Vancouver. So they cook
Nice.
that, and it's a nice contract, and it's a nice way to promote
Mhm.
the soup. I got my little picture next to my soup there, and I talk about Odanak and my aunts and my mother, and how this soup came about and where the origins of the soup. And so people, when they're trying to indigenize the airport in Montreal, so they're doing that all across. So it's a nice way to reconcile that, because economic development is also part of reconciliation. It's nice
Yeah.
to say do land acknowledgement, but you also have to do the step forward. And Air Canada did the step forward where they said, "Well, introduce your soup." And at first it was only Montreal, but then after a while they said, well, because there was a chef in Toronto and a chef in Vancouver, indigenous chefs, and they pulled out of the project and they asked me to do it. I said, "Well, okay,
Mhm.
that's what you want. Well, that's what you're gonna
Nice.
get." So I got
Nice.
the Watso soup all across Canada in the airport. So that's a way to promote my community and
Yeah.
not promote my family, but to tell, well, we're the Watsos. We're not many, but we're here,
Yeah.
and this is what we do. And so it was very fulfilling year,
Hmm.
and just that it humbles yourself to say, well, the soup, which was had so much hardship attached to it. Well, now people are sitting down. The
Joy.
big shots in the lounge of the business class are eating a soup where our families struggle
Yeah.
for many decades there. And but all through this resilience, it came full circle to say, well, our cultures deserve to be promoted, deserves to be discovered, especially the culinary art, and
Hmm.
it's a nice achievement there. So, what
Yeah.
was the question again?
I think you answered it, Jacques.
Oh,
I,
okay.
I I would just add that I think it's really great. I mean, as a chef, for me, I spent many years doing wild crafting and foraging and plant identification, and I've always thought, yeah, that there's a whole world of cuisine here that's native to here, that grows here, that nobody's really tapped into or tapped back into, you know. So I'm super glad. And your soup is very delicious.
Merci
I've had
beaucoup.
a couple bags you've given me
Yeah.
kindly. I wanted to just quickly say to everybody, I did want to give a little time. We'll wrap up by 7:30, but I did want to give a little time to answer questions, and then also at some point to let any Odanak community members, if they want to chime in and say hello to Jacques, they can do that as well. Jacques, the one last question I just wanted to ask too is I think you didn't really mention much your restaurant, but you have a restaurant now too, right? How's that
Yes,
going?
but it's not really open there.
Oh yeah.
But I did open it because I had a catering business, and then I had the
Yeah.
contracts with Air Canada, so I kind of shut it down. It was hard to get people to come and work there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And at the same time, I take care of the shop, but some days I'd
Right.
have like 40 people come in. Other days I'd
Yeah.
have two people come in, and it's kind of hard to stay all day for two bowls of soup there and cover your costs. So try to expand in different directions. And I signed a contract last week because
Mhm.
I do a drink. I do a berry and cedar infused drink. And here, Jacques Cartier, those who don't know who Jacques Cartier is he was the explorer that was sent by the French king in 1534. Francis the First from France, he sent Jacques Cartier to claim Canada on behalf of the French crown because
Mhm.
all the major powers were poaching
Exactly.
North Americas, and there was this little chunk of North America that was still up for grabs. So they came in and kind of claimed it for France. But as he was sailing here back in 1534, there wasn't ways to preserve foods except through salt. So a lot
Mm.
of their food were conserved in salt, whether it's meat or fish. So and then they have access to fresh water traveling on the sea. So they got scabies when
Mhm.
when they got here the first time. It's like it's not a running gag, but it's a collective known fact in French Canadian society where the Indians they saved Jacques Cartier from the scabies by this cedar drink.
Right.
So I did a drink, a berry drink with cedar, and then I promoted it as the original recipe of my ancestor Tadoussac Watso, who helped Jacques Cartier. He's the guy that everybody's talking about. And when I talk to French Canadians, they say, "Oh yeah, oh yeah." Said because it's all in their collective memory that the Indians saved Jacques Cartier. Says, "Well, that Indian had a name, and it's my great 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 grandfather who helped Jacques Cartier from the scabies," and they believe me. So
Give it 10, 20 years, it'll be a fact, Jack.
yes, I'm because we got a land settlement compensation coming in, and I took my money and I'm going to invest it in commercializing this product. I
Nice.
mix it at home, but and put it in bottles with a nice
Mhm.
design on it with this backstory of helping Jacques Cartier and the whole saving. Because scabies, the infused the tea helped them
Mm.
put them
Right.
rotting teeth there.
Yeah.
Although he died from the plague there in France when he went back, but that's not our fault there. But
It's not your problem.
we did save him from the scurvy. So
Yeah.
that's my next project is
Yeah.
my commercializing my juice.
Very cool. Very cool. So I'll wrap that up and I'll thank you, Jacques, of course, for taking the time. I know you're a very, very busy man, and I hope this was more restful than hard work for you. So um, yeah, so I wanted to open it up to first anyone from any other band members, family members who wanted to chime in. You can raise your hand or say hello if you feel like it. Denise?
Hey, Jacques, how are you? Very nicely done. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I learned a
Merci
lot,
beaucoup.
and I appreciate it. All you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I know. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Like I said, I see there's clothes in there. Like I told her before, I see your house from here. I'm at council.
Yeah, I'm not far. I'm not far. I let's have a soup soon. Thank you very much for all this knowledge. Really, I've learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and for the Wabanaki people here, the Abenaki people, next week, hold on, Saturday, April 4th, there's a spring social in Penobscot land in Old Town. There's going to be traditional foods. I'll
Nice.
be heading out that way.
When is
Yeah,
it,
and
Jocko? Where?
go ahead.
Old Town?
Sorry.
Old
I don't have it
Town.
here.
Can you put it in the chat?
Let's see, did I save it? Oh, it's on my phone. Maybe Nikki
Oh, I
has
couldn't make it.
quicker
Eliana
access to
turned.
the.
I'm sorry. But it would be good for anybody else who can make it. I wouldn't be able to make it. And Eliana turns 18 on Sunday, the 5th of April.
It's Easter. Now, my wife was
Yeah.
supposed to come with me, but they're going to see Lady Gaga in Montreal the night before. So
I think I would go to see Lily.
she's bringing the baby to see Lady Gaga.
Oh my gosh! Oh my God! That's
So I said, I will not be attending Lady Gaga, for they are $400 a ticket, the cheapest one. So I said, yeah,
where is it?
that's Montreal, the Bell Center where the
The
hockey
Bell
is.
Center. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh!
Well, it's Canadian, so that's about like
Like
100 bucks
200 bucks.
American.
It'd be better to go there. Oh my gosh, than be here in this country. All right.
And so, because we're a pretty small group too, if anyone else has any questions or wants to say hi or comment, feel free to raise a hand or just jump on in.
You want to talk about
This is
the
David
The
Stoll.
only thing I
Jacques,
want to
thank
know, Jocko, is when you get you. Oh,
huh?
That was quite an echo there. Denise, did you want just go ahead and say something, and then David Stoll can do his question or
but Jocko, when you get your soup up and running, let me know.
Yes. Well.
Not the soup, but the drink, the
Oh, yes.
for the scabies.
It's in
You
production.
get scabies, so I would like that juice.
scurvy, right?
Scurvy,
Yes,
scurvy.
but I call it the
It's
Watso
scabies.
juice.
It
I call it the Watso juice. I'm thinking, but they're gonna form
protects you
the
against everything.
formulator will
Scabies. Some men
create
do
the
have it, it'll
soup.
save you.
Yes, the formulator that I hired that will make different samples from the different ingredients that we did, and with the carbonated in it with different degrees, and they're going to ship it out next to do taste tests. And once we find the right one, it's going to be in production, and we want to sell it, not sell it, but we'll buy a pallet to give out at the powwow to like a
Tribute,
collective taste tester.
but get it out. You said, or is it a taste testing?
No, I'll do a taste test first. Once we have the recipe, they'll produce a pallet of drinks, and I'll give it out at the powwow. Since it's not homologated from the Health Canada, we can't sell it, so we'll give out the first taste run, and then then we'll get some people to judge it or not judge it, but get people's opinion on it, and then if it's a go, then it's a go. I'm pretty sure it's going to work out.
All right. Thanks, Denise. David Stoll, you
That's
want to go
my
ahead?
cue to shut down. I can't close my thing there.
Jacques, I just wanted to thank you for a great presentation. Uh, it's really wonderful just to hear you talk about uh, Odanak history and and also the business ventures. I'm going to have to look up Marcus and Joe Coffee as well as your soup. And I think that that name Watso Juice has great commercial potential.
Yes.
I don't know if you said that as a joke or not, but
No, no.
it sounds really, really interesting.
As we're thinking about scurvies, trying to find a wording with it, but
Don't associate the Watso with scurvy.
it doesn't like it doesn't. So then someone said, "Well, you got Sagamite Watso, just do an extension, the Watso juice." Oh my God!
Watso Juice is going to work better than anything with scurvy in the title. Although
Yeah, yeah.
that can be in the explanation of what it's good for.
And then they'll say, "Well, am I going to get scurvies if I drink the juice?" Well, thank you. But yes, I wanted to mention something. I think this dialogue is important, where you got the collective, not a collective, yeah, oral tradition. Well, we always talk about oral tradition, and a lot of people, they came to Odanak to study us, anthropologists, geographers, historians, sociologists. They always come in here, and then they trying to psychoanalyze us, and they know better than us, and they just want to come here to confirm what they studied in the books. And then once we tell them, well, this is a story, this the Sagamite is the hardship and all that. Oh, and they didn't read about it. Well, it's because a lot of people don't want to get into politics, but they interpret our culture, about the Abenaki culture. They imagine what the noble Indian Abenaki would have been, should have been, and how we acted within our communities. But that's just an interpretation of what people perceive as being Indian, and then our stories are not sometimes listened to, and this gives a nice platform where we're not academics and we're not here to do an anthropology class, but we're here to talk about stories from our families and how we perceived our lived history and how we lived our lived history. It's not a perception, it's how we lived it and how it affected us today and where we are today. And all this hardship, and people, they don't see it. It's an accumulation of centuries of negativity, where, just to flip it around, there's been a big change in the last 20 years, but there's still a 200 years behind it that wasn't so glamorous there. All the impacts of racism all the way through the 1980s, 1990s, all the culminating to the Oka crisis here in Quebec. And so it's nice to have a platform to express, and I see that not just here, but in different spaces where the academics, they reach out. Like I was telling Richard before, I went to Bishop University yesterday for a catering gig, and they have an indigenous group over there, and they did a curriculum on indigenous identity to help academics, to help students to address Native issues. So it's something important, because for too long the dialogue has been one-sided, where white settlers spoke on our behalf and spoke on our lived experience, and we have a platform, and more people are expressing themselves, and it's just a soup, but there's so much history behind it. There's such a a big big history behind it. So it's nice to have a space where you can express a different story, but from the people that went through it or are living it. Merci beaucoup.
Mhm. Thank you, David Stoll. David Massell, I saw a hand go up there for a minute.
You got it.
Hi, hey, this is Laura with Dave, and I just had thank you so much for the presentation. Just fascinating and amazing work you're doing. And as you're describing the storyline that goes with all of the work you do and representing it through food, it occurs to me there's a show called How I Built It on National Public Radio in the US. And it's a kind of an entrepreneur calls in and describes the product, the idea, the concept that he or she is um, working on. And there are a couple of really interesting and thoughtful um, entrepreneur, successful entrepreneurs who guide and advise the person about the product. It might be a really interesting way to get the word out about the beginning, a piece of your business, and it could grow more than you want, maybe. But uh, great thing to think about.
Yes, yeah, thank you. But I got a mentor here, not but I have a
Even
mentor
even
going back.
better.
But we worked on it, got all these ideas. And actually, I was talking with a businessman yesterday, a friend of mine he does a lemonade with lavender with his daughter. He says, we're talking about that. And a lot of people, they start and then they go buy a brand new pickup and then they file for bankruptcy because they didn't focus on taking the time to develop your product. And I'm taking like small steps and moving slowly and
Right. Yeah.
go see the different resources and the different people and the different support that's out there. And for the States, there I had an online shop there, but I shut it down because the you got tariffs. So you got
Really?
yes,
Just
you got
kidding.
a government that's not too keen on North American free trade, and it affects my business because I'm a small business, so I do a lot of shipping. So the shipping cost is very expensive because of the fuel. And now it went up because I got a shop and I see the empty baskets because once you come to the checkout line,
Yeah.
there's a cost involved in it, and the small businesses. It's one of the problems is the shipping. Like one bag is $10. So if I would ship this bag, which is 370 grams, it would cost the average people in the province of Quebec average $15 of shipping. If I have five bags, it's still $15. So people they don't want to spend $50 to try the soup in case they don't like it, but they don't want to buy just one and it costs them $25. So I do like deals on shipping and absorb a certain loss, but the considerable loss. I want my product to be out there, but shipping is a problem. And then when I went shipping to the States, the shipping was even higher. And then when the tariffs came in, I think it was last year or a year and a half ago, I shut down my shop there because I got to respect my orders. But when it costs you, when you're paying to the individual who ordered my soup to
Right.
taste it, I'm not. So it's hard because you want to do like commerce, and a lot of people from the state of Vermont and New Hampshire would ask, not ask, but order my soup to
Yeah.
there's a proximity. So it wasn't too bad on shipping, but once the tariffs came in, it's like it's a lot. So it really fluctuated the tariffs because depending on the wild mood swings of your big chief there, and he would go to 50 down to 15 and whatnot. But I got corn. My hominy corn was from Nebraska, and all the other beans and ingredients are from the Quebec. It's close. They grow all the beans close to Odenak, but the hominy corn was the hardest to find. But now, because of the tariffs and the Nebraska state, it was. I'm not doing like Trump politics there, but it's a monoculture of corn in
Yeah. Right.
Nebraska, and their biggest client was China. And once they did the tariffs with China, 50%, China, they just said, just when they did the tariffs, the next day they said, well, we're cutting off the contract, so we're going to go to Argentina buy their corn instead. Same thing with the soya, but I don't put soya, but they also did soybeans. So it kind of backfired the tariffs, and it's a shame because the I can't find how many corn in Nebraska no more because all the farmers are really struggling, and it really impacted them, and it impacts my company because that corn now I buy it in Tennessee, and just a hominy corn, and it really went up. It's because corn is corn. It's not cheap. It's not as expensive as beans, but now it's over. It's like fuel. It went over the gasoline. It really skyrocketed, but it has an impact on the food chain. here for my business, so that impacts the cost of producing my products, and I try to keep it at a low level. In January, I raised my prices from $10 to $12, but I changed my bags and I added more and more. I went for 370 grams to 400 grams, but the trying to compensate, trying to keep it as low as possible so people can appreciate it. Because I've seen prices of the food. You must have seen that, Richard, through catering business, where access to food, and once you do catering, there's a lot of variety of food that you have, and you have to buy a larger quantity. So, but it affects your bidding at a certain time, and so it's hard for everybody. It's the little people and trying those let's say a business wants to order a catering for an event. Well, they kind of downsize, so it affects the whole food chain and the whole economic development around the food industry. Plus, people are having a hard time to cope with the high prices of their groceries. So I'm trying to maintain an average where I want to abuse people with to say, well, I'd rather take a profit not loss there, but diminution than to raise my prices to get the same profit that I did 4 years ago. So I'm still making money, but not as much. I'm less a millionaire. Instead of a billionaire, I'm a millionaire. But it's part of the food chain. It's part of also the history that goes with it, where this soup comes from a big history. So I don't want to profit off of it in that sense. Or I want people to enjoy it at a reasonable price. And it's delicious, nutritious, and indigenous.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jack.
Thank you, Jacques. You can always go into comedy.
Yes. Some people, they write me, I can't have access to your soup from the States. Well, I said, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Jocko, I told you, I put it in the post that I will drive it across the border.
Well,
No shipping, I told you before.
you'll do 10 years in prison for smuggling,
No,
Bean smuggling.
smuggling
it
soup.
was there. I didn't know. It was just there. The only thing they would do is take it.
Yeah, Jacques, we could talk about it at some point. Maybe I could connect you to somebody down here who could be you could make it here, right? We could like put it together and you could still sell it in the States then.
Yes. Oh, also when I see Chris, he can't buy it locally here. In the future, yes, because when I ship, also we had to sign a form, a duty form from Post Canada, and there was this big thing. You got to go on the platform. You got to fill out this. It's like shipping a container just for one bag of soup, and it's ridiculous, ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jocko, I did bring it across before.
Mm-hmm.
Hobart.
Yeah, I think
Back in the
the
day,
Watzos
we
used to
smuggled
sneak some
cigarettes there,
baskets
but
in.
we'll smuggle soup.
Smugglers. Soup smugglers. No
Yeah,
such
you end
thing.
up with smugglers of drugs and smugglers of cigarette and guns, and then you're in jail, and then you say, "What are you in for?" I smuggled some beans.
We're just smuggling soup. We're good people. We're the good ones.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I think I'll wrap it up there with a few minutes. Yeah.
There was
Thank you
in the
again,
chat.
Jacques.
Is that what people used to do with the basket trade? No, they didn't smuggle it, but there was still duties. I think Christopher had an article from 2000 from William Watso there that he had paid like $5,000 of duty on baskets in 1918, I think it was.
We try
I
to
remember that time, but that's a lot of money there in baskets in 100 years ago. But one day I'll be making that money with my soup. But it's a nice. It brought me where I wasn't supposed to be, and it brought me all over the place.
Yeah.
So I'm very blessed and pleased because I'm a carpenter by trade and getting older and broken down. There, you say, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? There,
So you decided to be a cook? I don't know. I think you moved sideways there. I'm not sure.
I should have done cooking from the start. Be
Yeah.
inside there all the time.
Yeah.
It brought me like my friend, I saw a friend there recently. He started a business. When you sports arenas with the sparkles and all that, there's no other business like that in Quebec. So he started that business. We used to hang out. Now it's in full expansion because he did an event in Odenak. He says, "Well, oh, see, that's where life brings us in all these different crazy directions."
Yeah. Awesome.
Oh,
Thank you, Jacques.
oh, young warriors. That's it. That's all. Hey,
That's it.
see,
Thank
this is
you. Thank
Odenak. This
you.
is the map of Odenak, and here
Nice.
is my house right here. I'm here at my office.
Uh,
So
for
if
for I was gonna say for Guy and if David and a few other people, so if you want to stick around after, we can chat. Oh, look, Anna's
thank
here.
you very much for listening and inviting me, and
Mhm.
I'm very humbled to have shared these stories with you guys, and all the future listeners. So on that, I bid you adieu.
I do.
Ole on it.
Rocco, thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.